Today I thought it'd be interesting to go through the different backgrounds of private equity professionals, especially those at top tier firms and at the top of the management at those firms. Uh, the the point I really want to make is that you can come from different backgrounds, different academic backgrounds, professional backgrounds, and still have a place for yourself in private equity. And just the way that these individuals work themselves up to the highest rungs of a very exclusive and competitive industry. First, we're going to start with David Rubenstein. He's co-founder and managing director of Carlyle Group, and he comes from law, actually, which is not, I wouldn't say common, but I've seen it many times in private equity where people have a law degree, and this prepares them with the technical skills, an analytical mind to go into private equity. It also comes in handy for firms. They like to have a lawyer on staff, so they're pretty well equipped, and they're not opening themselves up to legal exposure. All right, so Mr. Rubenstein, magna cum laude at Duke, and then he went into University of Chicago Law School. This is one of the top 10 law schools in the country, and he was the editor of the Law Review. So he was pretty committed to practicing law. Probably had not thought of private equity at that point, and then he had a private practice. Then he went into government, which this is pretty unusual. I've seen a lot of private practice lawyers go into private equity, but not so much government. And he was known as a policy wonk. I read an article profiling him where he was one of those guys that stays in late in the office, all hours, working all hours of the night, trying to get policy drafted. And he was chief counsel of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee on Constitutional Amendments, and he worked during the Carter administration as deputy assistant to the president for domestic policy. And after this, he went to go practice law in Washington. He's worked his way up by starting the Carlyle Group. So as a founder, it's obviously a little easier to get your foot in the door because you're the one creating the firm. But it is difficult to get in touch with the wealthy individuals that it takes to start a private equity firm and have investors. And I would assume that he used his political connections. I'm sure he's familiar with wealthy individuals through that, and people who just knew him as a very smart guy and very capable would probably trust him with their money. He also worked in New York, private practice law. So I'm sure he has a lot of connections there where he was able to start his firm with his partners. Now we're going to go on to KKR, another top 10 private equity firm. And we're going to look at Henry Kravis and George Roberts, two very wealthy individuals because they have a very successful company. They actually, I believe they met in Bear Stearns, obviously doing a little bit better then. That's an understatement. But so, along with Roberts and Kohlberg, they went on to found they wanted to really lead in the division of leverage in acquisitions. So they're doing highly leveraged deals in the 70s, which wasn't unheard of, but to do it on the scale they did was pretty impressive. He comes from the background of economics. This is a major that I see a lot of professionals go through economics and then go on to get their MBA. I think it prepares you pretty well. You understand macro issues a lot better, and it's something a little bit different than just the normal business degree. Then he went on to get an MBA from Ivy League School, Columbia. This is fairly typical, and really the why I brought up KKR is that Kravis and Roberts and Kohlberg were all in Bear Stearns division of leverage buyouts, and in this acquisition spot, that's where they all met. That's where they decided that they were smart enough to open up their own company and probably do a lot better and focus full time on buyouts and leverage buyouts. So Roberts has a similar background, except that he went to the Military Institute. So this is something I really have never seen before, but I know that there are people who come from military background, but I've not seen someone go from the Military Institute and then directly into getting a BA, and then he got his Juris Doctorate from University of California Law School, in 1969. And again, this is a lot of lawyers coming in, especially those that run the firm. I think this has to do with the legal requirements for setting up a private equity firm and being able to manage it, especially at the beginning as a startup. Now we're going to go on to Blackstone Group. Stephen A. Schwartzman, one of the top people in private equity, if not the top. Blackstone Group hasn't been doing exceptionally well lately, but they have still always been able to generate very strong returns in a way that's really impressive. He has more of the typical background that you'll see for the top private equity management people, and that is a BA from Yale and then an MBA from Harvard Business School. Excuse me. And just as the typical background, he gets his MBA from one of the top schools, and those are just feeders into the top tiers of private equity and also finance. He specifically went to Lehman Brothers, so he wasn't going directly into private equity as a lot of these people weren't, mainly because I think private equity firms didn't have the reputation that they do now as a top spot for private equity or for young professionals. He began at Lehman Brothers, where he was working at mergers and acquisitions business, and this is pretty typical. You see a lot of people coming from mergers and acquisitions, gives them the background they need, and then they go on to found their own firms. This happens pretty frequently because they know the business, they've learned it, they spent years doing it, and they like to do it on their own rather than having to work for Lehman Brothers or another investment banking company. And really what I want to highlight is that Stephen Schwartzman has the very typical, almost cliche background for a private equity individual in top management position. Now, CVC Capital Partners. This is something I wanted to highlight because, as it says, our professionals represent over 20 nationalities and operate locally in more than 25 different languages. Now, I've kind of harped on this point a few times in past videos and articles, that having a language really will help you, especially as it's a more global economy now than it was even 10 years ago. That language experience is incredibly handy, and it will really help you in your career path, opening lots of doors that you wouldn't otherwise have. And CVC, as you can see, the countries on the side here all represent different countries. It's like this throughout, and the partners, like Hugo van Berkel, is representing Netherlands, and they're all partners in different areas of the world where they have very unique experience, and they're able to operate specifically in that region and able to focus full-time on that. I think that's what makes CVC such a unique firm. It's that they really have an international focus, and as you can see, they recruit from all around. And I think that really helps their company because they're able to draw from the top talent from all over the world rather than just focusing on the United States and UK business schools. Now we're going to go on to Bain Capital. This is one that I thought was particularly interesting because a lot of people think that they can't make the transition into private equity because they have a somewhat unrelated background, such as Michael Ward here is managing director at Bain Capital. And he earned a bachelor's of science in accounting and finance, and then BAS in chemical engineering from University of Pennsylvania, and that's pretty unique. But I have seen this in the industry, where you see different individuals working in private equity firms that are just intelligent people and have a drive and understand business, and that he has an MBA really helps him because it takes away the focus on just the fact that he comes from chemical engineering, and also that he coupled it with an accounting degree. So if you come from a different background, such as chemical engineering, anything, even liberal arts, these can be these sort of lackings almost can be made up for with a MBA or a focus on a double major in undergraduate. And I really encourage you, if you're considering going into private equity, to supplement your undergraduate degree if you feel it's lacking in focus on the major and something that's related to private equity, to consider working towards a double major or just going on to get an MBA, because that's really going to position you to go into private equity. So I think the lessons we learned from looking at these 5 firms are that they come from very diverse backgrounds. They have degrees in very different subjects. They've worked at different companies that may have led them to get into private equity, such as mergers and acquisitions units at investment banks. And I think that's pretty typical. But also that you can work in a different profession for multiple years, even like David Rubenstein did, working for the government and for private practice law, and still be able to go into private equity and have success, as all of these firms have had. And I think these are all very good examples of the diversity that is private equity professional, and how it's never too late to consider switching over from a profession, or to start making your moves to better position yourself, like Steven Schwartzman, to have the ideal resume for a private equity firm. I hope this was helpful, and we'll have more videos online coming soon at privateequityblogger.com. Thank you.